Welcome back. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada this week. If you would like to send us an email, xzone at xzoneradiotv.com, on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. And for all the programming we have available, 724, 365 on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit xzbn.net. And on Simul Radio and Simul TV, www.simultv.com. My guest this hour, X Zone Nation, is the author of the explosive book, UFO Highway. Anthony Sanchez is the founder of Umbra Research, a group dedicated to understanding the hidden aspects and the mysteries behind UFO alien phenomena and the paranormal. Anthony and his team of investigators have visited such locations as Area 51, Dulce, New Mexico, China Lake, in addition to multiple reported UFO crash retrieval sites, most recently Yosemite, California, where he filmed for a broadcast network. He currently works to bring public awareness of underground facilities, alien-human hybrids, Greys, and UFOs. Now, during the day, Anthony owns and operates the world's #1 paranormal software company for Windows, Ghost Hunter Apps. And his website is www.ufohighway.com. And Anthony, welcome to the X Zone.
Thank you for having me, Rob. I appreciate it.
Where did your interest in the paranormal UFOs come from?
Well, the interest originally was with UFOs and alien abduction phenomena alone. They had nothing to do with the paranormal. In 2012, that's when I got involved in the paranormal as a result of the UFO alien research that I had been doing with software. But my story begins back in the 1970s when I was a child, and I had numerous UFO sightings, and I actually had engagement with what I believe are gray aliens. I saw massive cubes floating in the sky with strange lighting systems, and I lived right in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. I was in San Jose, California, right next to Moffett Field, which is in Mountain View,
right,
surrounded by the NASA Ames facility. So I wasn't the only one seeing weird things, but I was one of a few having or experiencing, strange events throughout my childhood, which ended up placing me in therapy because nobody believed me. And ultimately, for me, that all changed in 1981 when I was coming back from a professional baseball game, the San Francisco Giants. I was with my dad, my uncle, and my younger brother, and we were driving by Hangar 1 at Moffett Field. And this was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we saw a massive saucer-shaped UFO hovering outside the doors of Hangar 1. And you could see the lights were on inside of Hangar 1, and you could see the silhouettes. Keep in mind, Hangar 1 is massive. It's one of the biggest hangars in the world. When conditions are right on the outside, it has its own atmosphere on the inside, and it could rain. It has actually formed precipitation on the inside. That's how big this thing is. On that night, we could see the silhouettes, trucks, people running. Something was going on, and that was the night that changed my life, because my dad realized that I wasn't lying. I had seen these sort of things, and I don't know if I was targeted or for what reason, but years of therapy culminating to an event with my own father and an uncle, and they saw what I saw, and that was very interesting. My life changed at that point. Later on in 1989, I was 19 years old. I was old enough to start driving, go out on my own, and take an interest in what it was that was affecting me throughout my childhood. What were the things that I was seeing? And I started looking up individuals who could provide me with answers. And just lo and behold, at that time, this is when all the Area 51 information was making it out into the mainstream. And I had become familiar with the work of Norio Hayakawa, who was putting together some of the earliest conferences there in Rachel, Nevada, which is right on the other side of the mountain range of the supposed S4 facility, which I do actually believe exists. I do believe the Bob Lazar story. And I've done a lot of research as a result of my experience, my personal experiences, and it's led me into this dark world of the military-industrial complex. I'm a software engineer by trade. I spent many years working for Intel Corporation, Hewlett-Packard, NEC. I even worked at Netscape when they used to exist.
Wow.
All in a software capacity. And I ended up meeting people who participated in projects throughout the Silicon Valley and the military, the various military bases and the contractors, FMC, the RAND Corporation, IBM. I ended up meeting people who were involved in black projects, and several of them shared information with me that just changed my life. And that's where my book, UFO Highway, metamorphosized from. Originally, it was going to be about Area 51, and then it turned into something that I had never heard of before, a place that I had never heard of, Dulce, New Mexico. I didn't understand the history, the lore, anything behind it. There were stories that had emerged that were on the earliest vestiges of the internet, but I wasn't privy to them. Not until I met this person who introduced me to someone who claims to have worked there. And that's what the Dulce interview is. This person said that he worked at an underground facility in northern New Mexico in several locations beneath Mount Archuleta, the Archuleta Mesa, and several areas in between, underground.
Okay.
Affiliated to some extent with Los Alamos National Laboratories, and of course the rest of the military out in that area, Kirtland Air Force Base. Mm-hmm. And so that's how the book came about. The paranormal interest was in 2012. I was at a conference in Los Angeles, and a friend of mine, Bill Murphy, who was on a TV show called Fact or Fake Paranormal Files. He was like the science advisor on the show, one of the investigators. He had noticed that I was writing software that essentially was scanning radio frequencies. And he said that what I had written, which was for the purposes of taking to Area 51 to detect, communications on non-standard, radio frequencies.
Well, wouldn't that be what Radio Shack came out with years ago called a Bearcat scanner?
I actually had a police scanner, a Radio Shack police scanner, which went up into some pretty high frequencies.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what got me interested in this. I said, because remember, I worked at Intel Corporation, and at the time I was doing some software development on this new technology that was emerging called Bluetooth.
Right.
I said, wow, so we have the industrial, scientific, and medical frequencies. There are 82 with 3 reserved scannable frequencies. Now, there's no radio stations. There's nobody talking.
Yeah.
You're not going to hear music. It's typically used for the transmission of data, like wireless data. Mm-hmm. And sorry about that. And right. I've always hypothesized that the military, maybe even law enforcement, but more specifically the military, could use such frequencies. These are the UHF, ultra high frequencies, that they could use them for communication, and we wouldn't know. we would just be clueless to their activities.
Right. You wouldn't be able to eavesdrop.
Right. So because I know that there's no music, there's no radio stations, there's no discussions of any sort, I am familiar with pattern matching algorithms, so I can do pattern recognition. And I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign audio phonemes, just sounds, just typical sounds that can be broken up into minute little pieces by the thousands. And I'm going to assign each one of them a numerical ID, like a 128-bit signature. And I'm going to make them only play if a specific frequency hits a specific signal strength. And by doing that, I walked away with a bunch of strange patterns that were not natural by any means. So I did discover that something was being communicated in and around the periphery of Area 51, and I would go there quite often using my software, and I knew how to boost ultra high frequency scanning for Bluetooth, from 32 feet up to 2 miles.
All right,
I could get
stand by, Anthony. We've got to take a break.
Yep.
ExoNation, our guest this hour is Anthony Sanchez. His website is www.ufohighway.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Welcome back, everyone. Anthony Sanchez is our special guest this hour. His website is ufohighway.com. Now, Anthony, before we went to the commercial break, we were talking about how you were able to, using your software, boost a Bluetooth signal from, what was it, a couple of hundred feet to a couple of miles.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, 32 feet to 2 miles.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of occasions where I actually extended it out to 5 miles. Okay. So doing that, anyway, so that was the whole reason why I developed that software. I wanted to go to Area 51, and I wanted to see, are there, not just Area 51, I also, probably going to get in trouble, but I went to Beale Air Force Base, China Lake, Edwards Air Force Base. I assume that there's UFO technology that exists, that there's going to be rampant, there's going to be rampant activity throughout the military bases and the various companies that work with the militaries as part of the military industrial complex. So at Area 51, I did pick up strange patterns. These were many of them were repeating patterns. They were not something that alluded to the exchange of data packets. This was some sort of communication going on back and forth, and they quickly shut that down once they realized that I was picking up and recording these patterns, these audio patterns on the on the UHF radio frequencies. Subsequent visits, there was nothing on UHF. So I believe that I picked up communication either from aliens or various sectors of alien contingents there at Area 51.
Well, wait a sec. Whoa. Slow down here. What makes you believe that what you had discovered had anything to do with extraterrestrials instead of highly classified data packs that were being used? And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't the Bluetooth technology actually developed in either Norway or Sweden?
Right. So the Bluetooth logo, if you look at it, it actually they're runes. I forget the exact terminology, but yeah, the technology was actually developed in Scandinavia,
right?
But the implementation and the integrated circuitry involved with the proliferation of Bluetooth across the planet was out of the Silicon Valley.
Oh, okay. But all right, thanks for clarifying that because that had been a question. But let's get to the crux of the question that I asked. How do you know this is alien technology and not?
Well, it's just a guess that, the patterns that I was picking up were, let's say there is an S4 facility right there where I was, where the hope was coming from, that the communication was coming from that facility. It's strange that every time we went back, whether it was in Alamo or Rachel, Nevada, or many of the places, the undisclosed places in between that we have, made as a part of our, regular visits, the UHF frequencies that we used to pick up these patterns on, they're gone. They're not being utilized. They're not like the first several times we went and made recordings. I have recordings of patterns that are just off the charts. I don't know if they're alien. The hope is that they are
Why?
alien, so that researchers can look at these audio patterns and try to decipher what they mean.
So in doing your investigations, you're actually spying on the government?
That's
Illegally,
it's
eaves,
not it's not well, first of all, radio frequencies are not illegal. Operating outside the periphery of a military establishment is not illegal.
are
I
you
could be
sure?
listening to an AM or FM radio station in the very same way that I have, recorded these signal patterns using my software. Most people will say I'm nuts. I'm just picking up nothing.
So why are you
Whether
so convinced you're picking up something that isn't in the interest of national security?
um, solely because, you may be right, Don, because we were shut down quick.
Yeah.
Um, it's not unlike several other people who went out to Skinwalker Ranch, and all of their radio signals were being jammed. I mean, overtly jammed. There's recordings of this. I'm friends with Sean Stone, who's Oliver Stone's son, and he had been out to Skinwalker Ranch with Jesse Ventura's son, and they had an episode of a show that they were doing way back in the day. That the radio signals were shut down through jamming, for all the frequencies being jammed,
But
and
one,
that's what's happened. That's what happens now when you try and pick up, patterns or whatever on ultra high frequency out there at Area 51 or Nevada, the stretch of Nevada that we go to. It's almost as we're being jammed because we're getting nothing now.
well, let me ask you this. You're out there, you're basically trying to interpret signals that weren't meant for you, because if they were, or I mean any member of the public, right? I just didn't mean you and whoever you
Right.
go out with. There's a reason why the frequencies are scrambled.
hmm
Doesn't it bother you that you may be doing the exact same thing that the Chinese are doing, the Russians are doing by trying to eavesdrop, by trying to undermine the security measures that law enforcement had done?
Let's say
Wait a
that
second,
I
wait a
were.
second. I wasn't finished. And the military are doing in order to protect the country.
Mhm.
Doesn't that bother you?
It does. First of all, you have to understand something. I'm very patriotic.
Okay.
Many, many years ago, I spoke about the Chinese, um, compromising integrated circuitry. This is on record. There are radio shows of me
Yeah.
years ago talking about, because I remember I was an engineer working for Intel Corporation, NEC, and Hewlett Packard, and 3Com.
Okay.
So I have always, been aware of the fact that our integrated circuitry, whether it's their motherboards or video cards or any type of circuitry, could be compromised.
Right.
And just this past week, the one thing that I had mentioned years ago finally came to fruition as a fact, that the Chinese had in fact implanted micro,
Yeah. In the cell phones.
small microchips onto server boards
Yep.
that are affecting major companies like Amazon, Intel, and various other large companies. So yeah, I've never gone out with the intent of trying to usurp the security of our national defense. I've always gone out with the intent of trying to prove the question of the existence of aliens. If I were to come across some sort of information transmissions, whether they be electronic or anything,
Yeah.
that had to do with the national defense of all of North America,
Right.
I would immediately go to the military, the FBI, and let them know what I have found. I would never try to suppress information or make a discovery that would harm national defense or
But- But
Right.
how do you know the techniques and the methods that you are using, which apparently have been discovered by the people who are using the transmissions? Because apparently you were saying that you pick up nothing these days in certain areas where the chatter was quite frequent. But all right, so let me just what's your main purpose?
Right. So my main purpose of developing these software technologies in the very beginning, was for the purpose of just that, picking up
Right.
chatter where none was expected,
Okay.
trying to prove the existence of facilities like S4 or the Dulce underground facility. That was the purpose.
But why?
That was the sole purpose.
Why did that need to be proved? Who cares?
A lot of people care. Thousands of people care.
But
A lot of people who've been abducted, part of my lab programs,
hold on
those
here.
are military abduction scenarios. Those people care.
Now, you know for a fact that people have been abducted by the military?
Without a doubt. As some of the research that I've done there in Dulce alone has presented factual data that the military were conducting a lot of the cattle mutilations that were taking place there. And I got that directly from law enforcement and landowners of the ranches in question where this had occurred. A friend of mine, Edmund Gomez, whose family owned a ranch there in Dulce, New Mexico for well over 100 years. They were part of the cattle industry, and they had to abandon their ranch, the business, and move into the grocery business, because they were just losing too many heads of cattle, and they were finding cattle with phosphorus materials. They had sightings of military helicopters, personnel from the military doing things there. In 2016, I attended a conference. I was invited to speak at the Dulce UFO Underground Base conference, right there in Dulce, New Mexico, and I met up with Linda Moulton Howe. And she and I had a conversation that went well into 2 o'clock in the morning, into early morning, on that subject matter alone. And we, it's quite clear, and this is factual evidence. I'm not just playing a guessing game here. I actually spoke with law enforcement, and I've seen physical evidence, photographs of.
Wait a sec. You said you've seen physical evidence. Did you see physical evidence, or did you see photographs?
Oh, well, photographic evidence.
That
Yeah,
you didn't take it. Okay. All right.
Yeah, thank you for correcting me.
All right,
Yeah,
stand by. We've got to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. And Exonation Anthony Sanchez is our guest. His website is www.ufohighway.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this news break as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to us around the world on the Mutual Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, iHeartRadio, Simul Radio, and Simul TV. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Anthony Sanchez is our guest this hour. Exonation, www.ufohighway.com. Anthony, why would the military or any of the other federal forces need to covertly mutilate animals?
From what I understood, what I was being told from law enforcement there in Dulce, New Mexico, from some of the samples that they had retrieved from the deceased animals, they had picked up, they were able to determine that there were poisonous, toxic materials.
Okay.
Ricin, they had found ricin.
Right.
In addition to anthrax. They think that they were actually using, now this is not a UFO, now, when I originally mentioned my labs, I was talking about abducting people. Now, the my labs investigations there in northern New Mexico led into the discovery of mutilated cattle. So
Okay.
there can be a lot of confusion there. Now, there are people that don't believe that the military are abducting people, but there in New Mexico, they believe that the military are indeed abducting people.
Well, once again, it's nice to come out with these statements that the military is is abducting people. Maybe they're being arrested for trespassing, and with the possibility of them being spies, and this is why they're locked up somewhere under certain laws that are out there just for that very purpose. So whether it's a military abduction, if they're abducted by the military or incarcerated by the military because they broke the law, they deserve it. Point blank.
Okay.
But once again, why would the military need to do covert action in order to test chemicals on cattle instead of just doing it at one of the many facilities that the military has access to?
I don't know. I've never been able to ascertain an explanation for that specific, inquiry. I don't know. That's a question that I've always asked too. It's like they have these underground facilities. Why aren't they not, conducting these tests at these underground facilities?
Yeah, and to have underground facilities makes total sense. Like, it would take a moron not to figure out, well, wait a minute, satellite technology, they have everything on the ground, then the satellites can see it, so you move it underground. That makes perfect sense. So where does the abduction of humans by military and the so-called alien connection with underground bases, how does this all happen? What's the sequence of events that brings people to this conclusion?
Well, first of all, there's a group of people who claim to have been abducted by the military. These are survivors of MILABs, military abductions. I'm not a part of that community.
Okay.
I know people from within that community through my research.
Right.
But there is a large community of people that are out there that claim that there are programs within the government that abduct people for the purpose of experimentation, superhuman, super soldiers, the development of super soldiers, things like that. That's not my area of expertise.
Okay, what is your area? What is your area of expertise? Let's get to that.
Deep underground military bases, the investigation of deep underground military bases, and engagement with gray aliens, people who claim to have been abducted, like myself, or have had experiences with aliens. Just so you don't think that I'm crazy and I'm not doing my due diligence with regards to understanding of this whole phenomena, or have never had information that is of any importance. So let me give you a little bit of history, just real quick, briefly. I was on Jerry Pippin's radio show. This was back in 2011. And I had shared with him, and then I was on Mel Fabregas' radio show just a few weeks later. And with the two of them, I shared information that had been provided to me from one of my sources, who was out of Lockheed Martin Company, who was telling me about this massive underground facility in China that nobody had known about. It emanated from the Chengdu district, extended all the way to the southern waters. And it was this massive facility, and he said that people were going to assume that it was part of the military, but it wasn't. That it was more of like these advanced living facilities, magnetically grounded, magnetically shielded, and electronically grounded. And I shared that information, and within a few months, a report came out from a professor, Philip A. Carver, who was a Pentagon specialist, a former analyst at the Pentagon specialist. He had conducted a 2-year study with some of his students who, I forget the university, but they had accumulated video evidence, paper trail evidence, and interviews. They have proven that there were 3,000 miles of underground facilities in use by the military in China. Well, my source told me that it was more closer to 3,500 miles, and just a small fraction of it had to do with the military. The majority of it were underground, professional and personal, state-of-the-art, living quarters, living facilities, to live in and operate in. Within a week of that report coming out from Philip A. Carver, a congressional hearing was prompted because of that, and they did a whole series of Senate committees and congressional committees delving into that, and they were wrong in many aspects of the report. If we're going to fall in line with the information that I was provided through my source. And it kind of makes sense, why would a country with vast financial resources construct some sort of, underground living facility? It's funny that at the same time,
it's very simple. Once again,
yeah,
it's a very simple thing, because anything underground cannot be observed by satellite technology. That makes total sense. Like, this is no big secret. The Canadian government has Carp, Ontario, where they do the same thing. We know about certain areas in the United States where there's underground facilities.
Here in the United States, we have Subtropolis, which is a 1 million square foot, underground facility.
But once again, how do we connect the extraterrestrials, the UFOs, and where does this information come from? How credible is it? Like, in today's society, information, is fluid. There's so much disinformation out there, especially on the internet, because in my opinion, the internet is the largest septic tank that mankind has ever created, because there's more crap on it and in it than any other source of misinformation in the world.
Right. It's a very powerful tool, while at the same time being a very deceptive tool.
Right.
I've always believed that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, trusting the information, then the information source is something of, something that's really critical, to trying to establish, the truth.
And you were talking about the two radio shows where this China underground facility was talked about, and then how in time there was a Senate hearing on it. And that is nothing unusual in this industry. We get at least 10 requests a year from different government agencies to supply them with the unedited versions of our shows. We do that. We've got nothing to hide.
Right.
But when it comes to, because there are people who are listening who think and believe in their heart of hearts that somebody is doing something or has information that the government should know about, because it may affect national security. And as their patriotic duty, they report it. And then the wheels are started. And yes, it gets to a senator. It's talked about. It goes to the Pentagon. It's talked about, and so on and so forth, until there's a congressional hearing.
Right. One thing I'd like to point out is that in the UFO research community, 99% of what we uncover is not. There's nothing spectacular there.
Right.
It has to do with the military.
Yeah.
We're observing, light patterns in the sky that are from military flares. They're from, like just the other night here in Northern California, my son calls me up, I forget, about 9:30 at night. He said, "Dad, oh my God." I said, "What is it?" He goes, "Did you see that?" I'm like, "Did I see what?" He goes, "I think it's the aliens." And I heard all his friends freaking out in the background. They're all 18 and 19 years old. And they were freaking out. And some of his friends, by the way, are in the military. A couple are in the Air Force, one's in the Army. And they were having to get together, and I told them, settle down. It's the Falcon 9 rocket. This was announced 2 weeks ago that on this very evening, a lot of people are going to freak out. They may hear sonic booms, or they may see strange, bright light patterns in the sky for a brief moment. It's the Falcon 9 rocket. And so then, I was able to calm everyone down. But that's typical. That's typical of what we get in UFO research. It's that 1%. That 1% that comes from, dark corners of the information circles. For instance, I have worked for over 20 years in the Silicon Valley, and I have worked with multiple people who have come from the military and from the military-industrial complex, who will not share anything of what they have done, and that's understandable, because they're beholden to whatever agreements that they have in place, whether it be through private contractors,
that's right,
and the military, or solely through the military. Now, there are individuals who have approached me over the many years who have come forth and said, we're doing something and it's not right. It's not right. It goes against, various morals that, could be applied to all of humanity. So one of the big projects that I uncovered was something called Leonid. And at first I was like, well, this is something that was shared with me, and I thought it was a Russian project or something, because the name Leonid.
Sure.
And then I was told it's not a name; it's an acronym. It stands for Low Earth Orbit Nanosatellite Interceptor Defense. It is a multifaceted weapon system that is being developed. It's very dangerous. There's a huge component that is based on artificial intelligence, and it has autonomous capabilities. And I heard that, and I was like, oh my God, they're developing something that could turn against its human operators. That's exactly what they were developing. Now, I got approached by the Air Force Office of Special Investigations.
All right, hold on. We're going to have to take our final break, so please stand by. X Zone Nation, our guest this hour is Anthony Sanchez, and we'll be back on the other side of this break as we wrap up this hour here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Nation, Anthony Sanchez is our special guest, and he is the author of an explosive book entitled UFO Highway, and his website is www.ufohighway.com. And he also has another website, let me see, where you can, it's his paranormal software at ghosthunteraapps.com. All right, so, okay, I'm a little confused here because
I could wrap up that last segment.
Oh, okay.
Really
all right.
quickly.
Okay.
So, and it's in line with what your thinking is. For instance, so I was given this information about this Project Leonid,
right? And
I started to make these discoveries. I was told about the project. It talked about these nanosatellites. This is before anyone was even discussing CubeSat satellites.
Sure.
They were talking about these swarms or constellations of satellites in low Earth orbit, and these drone, these drone vehicles that operated, in low Earth orbit. It's just a crazy idea. And I started to put information out on the internet about what it was I was researching. I was asking in various circles if anybody had information about it. I ended up uncovering congressional budgetary documentation, and then I was visited by some people who claimed to have been from AFOSI. It really put a fright into me. I stopped researching it. I really didn't discuss it at that point. I gave whatever I had to Linda Moulton Howe. She has some of the information on her website, and that was the end of it. And that was one of those scenarios where, yes, I was delving into that 1% of the really murky, dark, secret, scary area of UFO research. And the reason why I say UFO research is because I was being told, apart from the artificial intelligence component and the autonomous factor, that there were highly advanced technologies that were alien in origin that were applied to this project. I don't know what they were, but I was told that it was unlike anything that anyone has ever seen before. So, and then I was told that there was a component of this project that was for the purpose of incoming threats, not just, threats from other countries.
Could an incoming threat include an asteroid or a comet?
No, this was alluding more towards an alien threat.
So it makes a good story,
that's such a crazy idea. I mean, if you look at Stephen Hawking prior to his death, he had surmised that, there's possible that one day there would be contact with an alien species, and it wouldn't be, it wouldn't go well for humanity. So anyhow, my point is that I backed away from it. I realized this is dangerous. I'm being spoken to by people that are very serious, and they're not very happy with what I'm researching. Right. So I gave it up. I just gave it up. I had a website called projectleonid.com. I obliterated it. I took it off, and I did everything in my power to obliterate all facets of that, and I walked away from it.
You see, this is what I was talking about before when I was saying, you cross that line. You think that, this information has got to get out there because it's wrong that the government should be doing something so evil as protecting not only the people of the United States, but also in many parts of planet Earth. And if we have the technology, the bad guys also have the technology. So where does, as a citizen, I want to know what gives UFO geeks the authority to do something that might endanger my country, my safety, and the safety of those other people who live in this country. What gives you guys the rights?
There's no authority. There's no authority, by any governing body given to any UFO researcher.
But what gives you guys the rights to do this? Like, take up a hobby, take up knitting, take up stargazing. Why go after secrets that are none of your business?
Why question why the Earth goes around the sun? If Galileo had just fallen in line with the church at the time, we'd still be thinking that we live on a flat planet. We'd still be thinking that the Earth is at the center of the universe, that the sun goes around the Earth. And it's not fair of you to say to the UFO research community, why ask questions? Of course we know that there are various questions, various areas that we are going to possibly overstep a boundary that could affect others. And that's when the individual researcher has to make the intelligent decision and the wise decision to walk away, like I did in that one instance. I said, you know what, this is something bigger than trying to answer the UFO alien phenomena question. Right. There's something bigger at play here that could have an adverse effect on North America.
All right. We see these pictures. We see these pictures that so-called researchers, to me, I call them UFO hillbillies. They go onto Area 51 where it says blatantly, do not, no trespassing. And then they wonder why, number one, nobody believes them. Number two, why they're under the microscope of government agencies. And they're so blatant, like, oh, look what I did. I violated a U.S. a U.S. base that says no trespassing, use of deadly force authorized. Like, hello, don't you guys? I get it. There are things you need to know, and there are things that you don't need to know. And when you start sticking your nose into the area that crosses that line, you're putting a lot of people at risk. Especially when it goes out all over the internet, and in plain English, it pisses me off.
I feel your concerns. I understand that, and I have a background in technology. I have a degree in engineering. I was born in the Silicon Valley. I was programming by the time I was 10 years old. This is, for me, I've had these experiences, in my childhood. Yeah. And I'm not going to have anybody tell me that I didn't experience what I know I experienced.
Yeah, well, I didn't. Not one time during this hour did I, did I challenge your experience.
Saying that's where my interest comes from. And you said, what gives us the authority? None of us have the authority to do anything. But if we don't, step outside of the box and ask questions, we'll never truly know anything about the world.
There are things you should know, and there are things you shouldn't know. Why can't you people just understand that? If the government wanted you to know everything, and if you know it, the bad guys will know it. They would just put it in a newspaper, put it on a government website. Would that make people happy?
Well, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
How do you feel about former military personnel going public, talking about, rocket systems that were being manipulated by unknown,
All right, this sounds like that missile silo base story.
Right. That's exactly what I'm bringing up.
I don't believe him. I don't.
What gives them the right to talk about that?
That's right. Ben, you are so right. You are so right. They have no right
Randall,
talking.
Robert Salas, all the people that are, were part of that whole, right. So what gives them the right? And why do they get to appear on Larry King, CNN, and have these discussions? And, what makes their information any less credible or noteworthy than the information or the research that, UFO hillbillies like me are conducting?
It's very simple. Do you see the mainstream media paying any attention to UFOs anymore? No. Do you see the mainstream media paying attention to alien abduction stories? No. Do you see the mainstream media paying any attention to cattle mutilation cases? No. Because people have said, you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't affect me. And when Larry King was there, he used, the media goes for ratings.
Right.
A lot of these reality shows are anything but reality.
Sensationalism.
Exactly.
Right.
And it's come to the point, Anthony, that people just don't believe and they just don't care. But when you cross that line that endangers national security, that's any member of the military who comes forward and talks about their experiences with extraterrestrials, I think they should be arrested, thrown in jail, and the keys thrown away. Because they take an oath of secrecy. And if they break that oath of secrecy, how do you know they're not just spewing bullshit all over the place? Why do we trust them? Or why do certain people trust anyone? I mean, anyone who takes an oath.
You know what it is? I think that, these individuals who have operated in, whether it be a military, a law enforcement, or some sort of professional capacity, they go about their lives, they're normal people, and then one day, lo and behold, oh my God, it's a life-transforming event happens to them, and it does transform them. It makes them question everything. I've seen things that make me question everything, and that's why I'm out there. Okay, maybe you're right. Maybe we shouldn't be, espousing, the research that could compromise, defense systems.
Right.
Or, absolutely, I agree with you on that.
So why do it?
If I ever felt that my research did that, I would walk away from it, like I did with that Leonid project. I knew it was something above my pay grade.
But yet, you yourself said that you gave the information to Linda Moulton Howe, who put it on her website. So doesn't that?
Well,
What?
Linda is a friend of mine. She's a very credible researcher who I respect.
Okay.
And I felt that if I was going to divulge this information to anyone within the community, it would be Linda Moulton Howe.
All right, we've got to say so long for tonight because we've just run out. XO Nation, our guest this hour has been Anthony Sanchez. And makes no sense to me why these UFO hillbillies want to destroy, infiltrate, and spread the news of something that may have national security implications. They don't think with this, they think with this. It's a matter of dollars and cents with these people. And in my book, you know what? They have no credibility whatsoever. I'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.